There have been times where I've been completely transparent, and there's other times where I've been zero dark 30. And you ain't heard from your boy in a while. And part of it is like I'm trying to work through some stuff, or I'm embarrassed about what I'm going through, or...
Alright, you take a minute. I gotta intro you again, so let's go. My guests out here don't know this, but this is the second time I'm telling you hello and welcome this morning to Authentic on Air with Bruce Alexander for episode 3 with Derrick Sier. A good thing we're re-recording because I was saying your last name wrong. So he knows this now, but before he didn't know this, I have parasitically taken him on as a mentor, just slowly sneaking in there, starting to take that information off him as much as possible, trying to just really sop up all the wisdom he has to share. He's Derrick Sier, and he's with us and ready to get real. We're going to give a brief intro. So my wife told me that podcast listeners like to get right into the subject matter. Through my life, I have learned more often than not, my wife is more right than I am, at least a little bit. I'm not going to give her the full, she's always right, but she's usually more right than I am. So I will keep it brief. A previous conversation with Derrick led me to today's reflection. Are you still being authentic if you make small value concessions to achieve your goals? Remember, this is not about being right or wrong. It's about taking the opportunity to challenge yourself and grow closer to your own identity. I know how to answer this question for myself, but for you to benefit, I encourage you to really visualize and role play your solutions and sit genuinely with your feelings. And if you come up with any interesting, surprising, or revelational insights, I would love to hear them. So you can hit me up on Instagram, Facebook, Threads, or LinkedIn at Authentic Identity Management. So I first connected with Derrick during the process of revamping a children's fire ed program. We sat down to see if it would make sense for us to work together. And quickly I found out that it would not, because I had a budget of $0. And this man was here to make money, and I respect that. I also figured out pretty quickly that his enthusiasm, optimism, and motivation were beyond inspirational, and I needed this guy in my top 5. So I bided my time, stayed in contact, and all but stalked him until the time was right. And for the last 3 months or so, he has been elevating my level of thinking through conversation. And I could not be more thankful to share my podcast stage with Derrick Sier. Welcome, Derrick.
Let's try it again.
Proud.
Do we have the button?
That's Dr. Dre. Why is that Dr. I don't think I have rights to use that. Anyways,
it'll be flagged on Facebook.
Soon I'm going to get this little soundboard down, and I'll find that applause button.
It's going to be nice. Thanks for having me out here today, man. I appreciate it.
And yeah, I'm sorry for the last 25 minutes that we recorded that was literally gold, and we had a little bit of a technical issue. But you know, I'm new to this game. I'm gonna get all the bugs out eventually.
Well, just for the listeners and the viewers, if you really want the first 25 minutes of gold, you got to go back and watch the YouTube clip. Okay, yes. Like the first one, I'm sure we'll edit it like first part mistake or something like that. But you're gonna get some really cool stuff. So this is just an encouragement to go subscribe, like, set your notifications for on an alert. The YouTube channel. It's going to be good. You get the double of Derrick today.
Yeah, so that'll be our bonus content for episode 3.
I like that.
We're going to have a bonus episode add-on because we did a pre-episode and we recorded that at least on video, and there should be some audio. We'll see how good that is. I can fix it. I can fix it. Don't worry about it.
I'm not
going to do it. All right, so for our listeners, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and really what you're trying to do for the community.
Yeah, so I think if I had to kind of narrow down what I do and who I am, I've really tried to narrow down how I describe this to people. And without saying, I'm a professional development person, mentor. I really have tried several different ways. My most recent way of trying to describe who I am and what I do is I like to reach to one side of the city, and I reach to the other side of the city. And I like Spider-Man, I pull them to the middle, right? Because I believe that there are parts of the city that would never meet without a Derrick, right? They would never cross paths. They would never connect without a Derrick. And so I take my connection, my visibility, my influence, and I just reach across Oklahoma City, the edges of Oklahoma City, and I bring people and organizations together. I think just because Oklahoma City and its landmass, it's just so easy for people to be siloed or separated.
Yeah.
And the northwest side of Oklahoma City has no reason to go anywhere else. And south side of Oklahoma City has no reason outside of entertainment to come north. Everybody has its own kind of this, their own sub-community within a larger community. And I think it's very easy to become complacent when you live, work, and play on the side of the city. There's no incentive to go anywhere else.
Absolutely.
And so I just kind of stand in the middle. Even though I'm an east side guy, like I get out and I move around and I connect with folks. And I just want to make sure that I'm using my weight and my leverage to pull sides of the city together and connect in ways that they probably would not have connected. And those three ways, I think, are community, connection, and mentoring. Community, connection, and mentoring. If I had to pick one of three or all three of the things that I do, it would go in one or all three of those buckets.
Okay, and this is where I'll diverge from our first version of this conversation. And instead of saying, why do you want to be Spider-Man, I want to say, why does it need a Derrick Sier specifically to act in that role? Like what is special about you that allows you to act as that pivot person between the communities?
Yeah. Have you ever heard of the Five Heartbeats?
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite movies.
Yeah.
And
Robert Downey Jr.?
Huh?
Robert Downey Jr.?
Robert Downey. No. It was what's his name? Short haircut. I can't think of it. He was Duck. He played the that guy.
Yeah, I know I've seen it. I'm thinking of a different one, but I know I've seen the Five Heartbeats, and I remember enjoying it.
Yeah, it's almost like a Temptation spinoff, right? It's like, anyhow, there's this part where they're on tour, and they're waiting for the album cover to come out. Mm-hmm. And so the Five Heartbeats and their manager, they're all standing around. They're like, he's like, tell Big Red, we need more better cars, and we don't need to be sleeping in these hotel rooms, and we need to get paid up front. He's like, okay. And it was like, all right, now what about the album cover? And this white guy, and he has the album cover in his bag. And he said, I just want us to keep an open mind, keep the bigger picture. And he pulls out the album cover, and it's like this white family on the beach. And they're like, man, where's our picture at? Why'd you take our picture off the cover? And he was like, well, we really want to create a crossover audience.
Yeah.
And that's the part where I'll pause the story. Mm-hmm. I think that there are people along the timeline, along this spectrum. And I believe that they have certain jobs. And I believe that some jobs are to speak internally to their own community. And I think there are people that who are tasked with speaking to other communities. And I think that in my most authentic self, I navigate well in multiple communities, right? I've almost created this cross-sectionality of my own person and my own connections and my own people. And so I think that Derricks, people that love to be in those, to be a bridge to different communities and to connect spaces, I think they serve as people who can navigate well, people who can speak the language, people who can fit in. And I say all those terms really, really loosely, tongue-in-cheek, because I know it may be a trigger for some people, right? Because it's like, oh, Derrick, he over there playing the game, or Derrick, over there tap dancing.
This is what I was going to follow up with. I know this world, and
I think it's very unfortunate that we live in a world that makes you choose.
Absolutely,
choose a side, pick a side. Which side you gonna be on? And it's like, man, I want my side to be diverse and eclectic, and I want it to have a bunch of different people who have a bunch of. We talked earlier about the importance of differences, and so I long story made short, I think that communities need Derricks. Yeah. I think there are people who face inward, and there are people that are also in that group that face outward. And the people who face outward, I think people think they have to defend outwardly, but there are also people who are curious about what's happening over there. And I want to know what's happening over there so that I can bring all the good things about all these other places back to my community. Mm-hmm. I want to know about business. I want to know about education. I want to know about faith. I want to know about mentorship. I want to know about property and real estate. I want to know about investing. And if that doesn't exist where I am, then that means I have to go get it, right? Otherwise, I stay in a place of lack, but filled with pride. And I think pride oftentimes prevents us from asking things that we don't know and getting things that we need.
Absolutely. So this otherdom that's created in this in today's society, how hard was that for you? Because I feel like you're pretty confident in your identity now.
Yeah.
for me, like I struggled with that otherdom for a long time with, people saying like, well, you're basically white. Both on the black and the white side saying, well, you're basically white. You're basically, because I was raised in white neighborhoods. I have a more polished voice. I don't use a lot of slang.
All the stereotypes.
Yeah. All the stereotypes basically means I'm white. Like I can't be educated in black. Like what? What does that say about our society? But how much did that shape how you came into yourself?
Yeah. And so I don't know that I've arrived to myself, right? I think that we're all like continually arriving. I think as long as we're living and we are reflective and we're assessing ourselves daily, I think there's an opportunity to grow and change. And so I think we're constantly arriving. I don't think that I'm there. I also think you said confident. I think that I'm more confident than I used to be, but I'm still not as confident as I want to be in who I am. And I think people who there's like a mindset that says don't listen to what other people say and don't care about what other people say. And I'm like, well, I'm actually taking in everything. Right. And if it doesn't stick, then I discard it. But to not take in anything means that I don't get the good parts either.
Absolutely.
So I take in everything. Now, as somebody that is like highly emotional, I'm a Cancer. I don't know if that means anything to anybody else, but like I am like highly emotional, highly sensitive. I try to be in tune and intuitive to my surroundings. I don't think that I'm an empath per se. I don't like using that language because I don't know what it is necessarily, but I am like sensitive to the people around me. That I understand that some of the things that I take on that maybe I should discard, that I entertain a little bit longer than I should. That is what makes the process of figuring out who I am and establishing my identity hard and difficult. You asked me how hard it was or how difficult was it to come into my own, and I say I'm still arriving, I'm still getting there. It's because like some of the hardest things that I've ever had to process that I did not discard came from people that I trusted. And that stuff hurts the most. Yeah. Like I remember coming home with my siblings, talking to my siblings, and it's like, oh snap, here come the college boy. And I'm like,
thanks.
Like, what? Is that it feels like, I don't know if this is unique to Black people, but like we have a way of like saying something that's good and making it feel bad.
Yes.
Like you can come out all dressed up and be like, where you think you going? It's like we just have this
ain't you slick?
You know what I'm saying? Like, what who you think you are? Trying to, it's like, and so I think that it's very unique, and I understand the nuance of the compliment and of the tease. Like, I get that, but I think even growing up hearing that, it kind of made it stand out in my mind as one, other and different, and then two, like, is that me distancing myself from a group of people that I aspire to be a part of because I don't do what's happening in the group? Right. And it's like, I went to this elementary, or it was a middle school, and I put 50 things on an index card and I just put them on the board. And I told the students, leadership class, smartest of the smartest. I said, I want whatever's left up on the wall, I want to represent me, who you think I am. I just walked in the room. I introduced myself. That's all you know about me. I want you to take everything off the wall that could not possibly be me. And on the wall, I had graduated high school, graduated college, got a master's degree, married, kids, live with my family, business owner. Like I did. Then I had like been to jail, pay child support. I'm just like, and what was left on the board was not me at all. Really? It was interesting to see their perspective of who a Black male is. And I think oftentimes some of the things that are left on the board, we embrace as a default of like, this is who we are. Right. And I think as an attempt to say, I don't want to be that, I think sometimes it's seen as shunning a popular conception of our perception of what Black people are or what this people group is. And so that was a long way of saying, like, for me, growing up in that environment, doing things that were not atypical was difficult. I think, one, because it made other people feel a certain way about me. But as much as I wanted to be included, I tended to downplay what I had accomplished in order to fit in. And I think I don't do that anymore.
That's good.
It's not something that I do. It's like, well, man, this is who I am. And I got teased for driving a Honda Pilot. It's like, oh snap, Honda Pilot. And I was like, I can't win, bro. Like, if I tuck my shirt in, oh, look at the preppy dude. If I go to college, oh, look at the smart dude. Mm-hmm. If I get mad, oh, here come the family man. So, you know, it's like, dang, God.
You wouldn't have had a family? Oh, look at you.
Oh, snap. You know, it's like, what? And so it's like some of those things of like, I understand the nuance of like people trying to compliment and trying to point out something that is not atypical or stereotypical for a certain community, but I want to make those things more common than they are. Mm. And I think there's a sense of pride in that for me. I know on the other side there may be a sense of resistance, but I think the diaspora of being Black is way more expansive than it has been limited to in the last 100 years.
Absolutely.
And I think we have to have that conversation.
I am totally behind you in that. That's, something I've embraced as well, is trying to take those things that we've been kind of brought down for mm-hmm. and saying, you know what? Yes, like I speak well. Mm-hmm. That's a good thing. Mm-hmm. I'm educated. That's great. You can be educated too, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. That's actually something that you should strive towards.
Yeah.
Don't let them tell you that it's a bad thing for Black people to be smart. Mm. That's what you're embracing whenever you make fun of somebody for sounding polished. Mm-hmm. You're embracing dumb as our default. Mm. I can't. I can't with that anymore. That's just beyond me. That is so far ingrained into our culture that an entire culture will clown you for being educated. Mm-hmm. I mean, just look at, sit with that for a moment and just think, how brainwashed are we?
Yeah.
It's time to make some changes.
And I think additionally, we have to expand what it is to be educated.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. I think the capacity that we're talking about is formal education.
Yeah.
I think, listen, some of these smartest people that I know are people who didn't graduate 8th grade or didn't graduate high school, mm-hmm. dropped out of school early. I mean, we were raised by a whole generation of people that weren't formally educated, and yet they were inventors, mm-hmm. Out of necessity, right? I think of the cotton gin mm-hmm. and the guy that was sitting under the tree, and he saw he was on his break, and he was over there, kind of watching this cat kind of go down the line, looking at these chickens, and the cat reached through the fence and grabbed the chicken in an attempt to pull the chicken through the fence. He pulled off all the feathers. Mm. Then this guy was like, it's like that. It's like when you tilt your head and you're like, wait a minute, I've been out here doing all this work and this cat schooled me in a matter of, a few seconds. And so that's how the cotton gin was invented. It was like, how do I separate? But it's like that guy wasn't formally trained on anything. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? You think about that people that went on to create essentials and necessities in community. They didn't have a formal background. They just knew how things worked and they put it together. Mm-hmm. And so I think that when we begin to put value on education in lots of different ways, then our conversation about what's being smart or being educated begins to include areas that we have decided are not traditionally smart, are not worthy of mentioning, mm-hmm. right? I know a grandmother who ain't measured nothing that will cook Gordon Ramsay under the table. She ain't measured nothing. It's a pinch of this. It's a sprinkle of this. It's a dash of that. It's a handful of this. And she's coming out with masterpieces.
Right.
Bro, she's smart.
Absolutely.
She's intelligent. And so not only is that an external conversation, but that's an internal conversation as well. Mm. And when I say internal, I mean the Black community, right? We have to start, how do we say? We have to start including things as a part of the conversation.
And to expand on that, whenever I say, you'll get clowned for being smart, mm-hmm. being educated formally is definitely one of those things. But it's really anytime you become able to passionately talk about anything in mm-hmm. I would say in any kind of polished manner, mm-hmm. all of a sudden you become an other. You are no longer cool. It
depends on what the topic is, though.
Man, I mean, it's even if if you're talking about rap music, if you've gotten to where you get down to the roots of it, you know where it comes from. You start breaking it down. It's like, well, actually, funk music was man, whatever, get out of here with that. It's like no, people don't want to hear. They don't want to be educated. Mm-hmm. Because now it's no longer a fun conversation. It really has become pervasive in our society that if somebody's teaching you, they're dumbassing you. And that's whether they're teaching you about how to cook, or they're teaching you about rap music, or they're teaching you about how actually this fashion design came from designer so and so and so. It's like, what? I don't care. Like, just give me my drip. Like, that's as long as they get the end result. It's so like instant gratification that there's not. Anytime you want to get back into the depths of it and you really start to have a deep conversation, it becomes unsafe.
Do I want to push back on that, Bruce? I think that there's a way that people have conversations. What am I trying to say? If I have a trigger response to people who use big words when they talk to me, and they're trying to explain something to me that is fun and I think is very simple, then I think I could take it as you talking down or being derogatory, right? And it's like, why using all the big? What was it? It was a movie with Kevin Hart, and he said, "I don't know what that means, but I'm gonna take it offensively, right?"
He says it a lot.
Yeah, I don't know what that means. I don't know what that word means, but I'm gonna take it as disrespect, right? And I think oftentimes when people take a posture of an offensive, oppressive nature, then I think the barrier goes up of like, first of all, I don't like the way you're talking to me. I'm not stupid. I'm not dumb. Why are you using all the big words? Why are you trying to make something that's simple into something that's complicated? Like, we're trying to, I think there's the element of that.
But doesn't that signify the problem? That trigger response to big words saying like, don't use that with me. Yeah. Instead of it being, hey, I'm not exactly sure what that means. Would you mind explaining that part to me?
Yeah. So that's why I think that it's layered though. It's layered as in like, if you can't approach me the way that I'm understanding it, there's the thought that I believe is one side is saying, well, why don't you increase your awareness or your vocabulary or your understanding? And the other person is saying, well, I'm taking offense at how you coming at me because you trying to make yourself seem smarter than I am. And I know you're not smarter than I am. And I know I'm not dumb. And I think that both sides have to give a little bit, right? They're one side, they're not talking down to you, right? But just because you've had somebody who uses the same approach talk down to you before doesn't mean that everybody that takes a similar approach has the same intent. That's one. The other side is like, well, now we have to create some nuance in the way that we explain things. Albert Einstein said, if you can't explain it to a kid, you don't understand it.
Now, but when you're talking to a kid, you're talking to a kid.
But I think you have to assess your audience in order to.
I agree with that for sure.
Yes.
Like, I definitely agree. Having been a public speaker for, really for a long time, but as an actual public educator for 2 years or so with the fire department, that was a big part of what I did, was trying to engage audiences by reading the room and talking on a level but whenever you're speaking to an adult, having a one-on-one conversation, and this adult is an adult, and you speak not really using not trying to extrapolate the largest verbs that you can, whatever, just like really, to me, it's, speaking at probably like a 12th grade level, I feel like that's fair. I don't think so. You don't think it's a fair point of entry?
No, like when we can't assume that people professionally, emotionally, spiritually are at a level where they should be.
Now, and whenever I say, I don't mean that you have to be there, but I'm just going to enter the conversation at that level, and then you say, I'm not there. And I'm like, oh shit, my bad.
But I don't think people are going to say that though.
And that to me is the problem, is that if you said to me, you started talking about like mechanical stuff, I'm terrible at that. I would say, slow down. I need you to talk to me like I'm a 5-year-old. Whenever it comes to that, I need you to slow down because I'm not good at that stuff.
Would you say that that's a mature perspective?
Sure.
That's an aware? You're self-aware.
Yes, I'm pretty self-aware.
Would you say that you're humble enough to say that you don't know?
Oh, no, it's not even about being humble. It's about wanting to, I want to learn. So
there's some humility in learning though.
Yeah, and so I love to say, wait, what? Tell me more about that.
I think that's rare. I think that in when we're trying to connect with folks, I think that we should assume the lowest. This is just me, and then work our way up, right? I think if we start at a certain place, then it's like now we got to dumb it down, and I don't know we would never say that, but now we have to readjust, right, our language, our perspective. I think that how can we communicate with people to maintain intact their dignity, their honor, and I think that comes with some curiosity. That comes with like some assessment It comes with being able to like read what's happening right now. Because like to me, and again, I risk coming in too low and then being insulting. I understand that as well. But it's like, would I rather...
So you want to gamble.
So you want to take risk out in these streets. I'm saying to me, like when I'm trying to get the info, as much as I go into environments and it's like, oh snap, college boy, I'm now surrounded myself with people where that is the expectation. And so now because I know that that's my surrounding, that I can enter into that and with a certain posture, a certain education. I go into places where I'm the least important. I'm still trying to figure out how I got in this room. Right. But I'm also in places where I know that as much as I don't know, I know more than the people in this room. And so they're looking to me for certain information. And I don't want to create barriers. I want to create bridges. And so for me, when I think of like, okay, initially you're in this room, then I would adjust my language. And then I'm like, everybody understand what I'm saying? Yep. Or I can come in at some, yo, y'all feel me? Everybody, you feel me? And they're like, yep. And then I started to see that their language changes. Then I go from you feel me to does everyone understand? Can we move forward? Like I adjust my language. And so my pushback is I think that we can't say that anytime you show any interest on anything from a formalized educational perspective and you want to articulate the way that you understand it.
Whoa, I don't know what that means.
Right. I think that there are people that can talk to me under the table, and I'm being super typical when I say this, folks. I'm sorry. I don't want to offend anybody. But I'm saying if people came in, people can talk to me under the table about Madden. People can talk to me under the table about fantasy football. People can talk to me under the table about a lot of stuff. And to me, that makes them smart in that area. And if they are hanging around other people who speak that same language, then I believe that group is knowledgeable, especially more than me in that area. And they can have a conversation about it that I can't. They can, in fact, nerd out on it.
Right.
And so I just think like when we use those terms, I want to leave some room for nuance, right? In that we can't say that anytime we talk like this, that these people respond. That's too big of a blanket statement.
Okay.
So that's my only pushback is like, I think that people nerd out on certain stuff. People nerd out on coffee. I got a coffee drink right here. People nerd out on coffee. And I feel like I'm a coffee nerd. But when people start talking about hues and hints and oily residue, I'm like, whoa, I just got a French press. You know, like I thought I was fancy because I had a pour over in a French press at the house. And I
thought I was doing big things.
Yeah, it's like, what? So yes, I said a lot. I'm sorry. I just wanted to provide that space.
No, and I will give you that concession because I am in a place where that is largely modeled by the experiences I've been through. And and it is very, very much people who have there's no grace for me actually wanting to help them or me actually wanting to provide the information for them. It's, as soon as I walk in the room, because and I've experienced this a lot. Either you love me right off or you hate me and I have to win you over. And something about how about my face, some people just want to punch it. I'm not even kidding. There are a lot of people are just I can't stand that guy.
I've had this face for a long time. Yes.
People think I'm mean. I'm I'm really not.
Bruce
people think I'm serious all the time. I'm almost never serious.
Yeah.
I want to help people and do good things. And people, they attribute the wrong, they think I've got the wrong intention coming in. And whenever you start from that place, then automatically it's no, you smart boy, don't come here with that. So I definitely, I will pull back and say I overstayed a little bit there. My experiences and the way that I interact with people has definitely shaded the way that the responses I've gotten. Yeah. And, and this, the next question I will ask you has to do with this is that I am at the best version of myself.
Currently?
Yes. The best version of myself so far.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm not saying that this is the final version.
Everything else is down here.
Version 10.0. Bruce Alex. No, I don't think that's anywhere close to the truth, but I think in my life as an adult, this is probably version 5 of me. And this is the best version, I think, by far. Yeah. But there's still little, version 5.2s, little tweaks and little, nuances that, nuance that need to be rolled out still. Yeah. So for you, what version of Derrick do you think you're on as an adult? Everything up until 18, that's just a programming phase. That doesn't count as a version yet because you're not even really your own person yet?
Oh, I think that's good. I mean, I can go back to like being 25, 24, 25. That's when my wife and I had our first kid, bought our very first new car, bought our first home. That version being like entering into my 30s, being another version. At 35, I'm 42 right now. So that's what, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, I'd probably say I'm in the 4.2, 4.3. I've still got some tweaks on this current one. And I just think about being a young person, being married, and then being like a young parent, kind of getting into this new world. And then there's something about like 30 that like makes things serious. And like my body starts to change the way that I process food. And now I'm a professional, and I've been in this space now where I'm with people that have a way more money than I do. And then I'm opening up to this world of like professionalism. And I'm in a space where I'm working with 70-year-olds and also 21-year-olds. And so that was a version. And then like I think there's this spiritual enlightenment that came probably around 23, 20, or 33, 34, 35. And then having like preparing for kids to leave and it being my wife and I, like that's a different phase. And so I think it's like all of those required a different type of focus, a different type of energy. So I would say like probably in my 4th transition right now of like turning into this mindset to where I'm not in like kid in the house daddy mode. And I've been a business owner for coming on 12 years. Like I just think that requires a different energy than it did the season before.
So it seems like your versions are kind of typified by preparing for a different life phase.
Yes.
Like for me, it is very much about not just major life experiences, but my reactions to major life experiences. And like, as I've look back on my story, like I figured out that these different versions are not something that I'm actually actively doing like I thought I was.
Ooh, that's good.
It's like I look back and it's like, I thought this was going to be a moment that changed me.
Yeah.
But what really changed me was this, and this. Like, for example, I used to sell drugs.
That's really good, by the way. What you said before, not the drug part.
No,
I know that is. But I want to come back to that, but go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So whenever my house got raided,
wow,
I thought that was going to be the moment that my life changed. Mm-hmm. It's like, this is going to make who I am forever. It did not. That was not it. What changed me was going back home, living with my mom, and hiding from my warrant for 6 months. That's what changed me, was my fear and my guilt and my shame, just hiding it.
Wow.
From that point, my mom found out about it and was like, I'm taking you to jail.
Yeah.
You're turning yourself in.
Woo.
And then you're going to go to court and you're going to deal with this.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, all right. So, but that time, living with my mom as an adult, I mean, it was post 18, but it was pre 21. So it was, it was still in the development phase. Yeah, it's a weird space. Yeah. But that time led me into the next phase of my life where I felt so sorry for myself for the next, I could say up to 5 to 8 years, because instead of just handling this thing, just really just taking it on like an adult, I hid from it, and that became my default, was hiding.
Wow.
And at the time, I never would have been like, whew, this is, I'm going to be a person who hides from stuff now. It's just I was so anxious about that. Then I got kicked out of school because I got in trouble because I stopped showing up to class because I was partying too much. All these things happened, and so then I was getting calls about my loan. I was hiding from that. I was hiding from all these things, and that was just like my default for a long time after that.
Wow. And
luckily, my wife, who met me during all that, was able to see through all that and see something good. Ooh. She survived through the absolute worst version of me, version 1.0. It sucked. It was terrible. And she survived through that.
Wow.
And helped me build version 2.0.
Yeah.
And that's, and that was not just having a kid, like I thought having a kid, this is going to be it. Right. And it wasn't. It was still drinking so much and making bad decisions that I threw up in front of my daughter once.
Yeah, bro.
And it was like, that was the moment. In retrospect, it was like, you have got to get your life together. People depend on you now.
Yeah. Whew.
Yeah.
My dude. And what I wanted to go back to, what you've already talked about, is like, how do we increase our self-awareness and our desire enough to be active participants in our change? You talked about like I can't remember the wording that you said, but it was something about being active or passive, right? And it's like, I think oftentimes we let things happen to us versus us initiating the change, right? It's like we just kind of we become reactive, responsive, and instead of being proactive, right? And I think that's something that I'm hearing you say, that something that I did as well. Just kind of, instead of saying this is what I want to happen, it was like, oh, that happened, so this is what I'll do now. And I never really knew. Again, I'm quoting this guy, Hetty. Hetty was like, the cool thing about life is that we literally get to write our stories. Yeah. I never thought about it that way. He was like, you know what's happening on the next page? When you flip the page, I was like, what? He was like, whatever you want to happen.
I mean, that's for real.
He was like, do you want to be skinny on the next page? Like, you can make it happen. Do you want to be a good husband? Do you want to be a good father? Do you want to be busy? Like, whatever you want, the next page, the next chapter. And I was like, bro, you blowing my mind right now. Oh, wow. Because if it's not what happens on the next page, if I let other people write it, I can't control it. And there's some things that you can't control. But for the most part, as I'm writing my story, right, I get to have a say-so in what happens on the next page. And that's what happens when we become active instead of passive participants in our current future, our own story. And I think talking about initiating those versions versus looking back and be like, ooh, well, I guess that was version 2.0. That was version 3.0. It's saying like, man, this is what I want to happen. Like, how can I be an active participant in making that happen? How can I do everything that I want to do, everything that I can do in order to make the story turn out the way that I want it to turn out? And I don't know that people take that perspective. They're like, man, how many times you talk to somebody, hey, yo, what's going on, bro? It's like, man, it's another day, another dollar. How you doing? Hey, man, just living it, man. Just out here trying to make it. And listen, sometimes making it is a win. Yeah. Like sometimes getting to the next moment, into the next day, to the next week, if you can just wake up the next day. I don't want to dismiss anybody that is in that current space right now. Sometimes waking up is the win. Yeah. Right. But I think there's a point in time where we waking up becomes so predictable, right? That then we can set something else as the next goal. Maybe waking up and getting out of bed. Absolutely. Right? Maybe waking up, getting out of bed and cleaning our house. Maybe it's like whatever that scaffolding is allows us to be the most active participants in the development of our future instead of us just being so responsive and reactive to everything. Yeah, and I agree with that. To qualify just a little bit is that I think that you can decide where and how you show up. Yeah. And that is a huge part of stepping to that next version. But then life is going to happen. So, agreed. And so for me, it's like that's the looking back part is like maybe like version 4 was an active decision. And I thought I knew who I was trying to become. Yeah. Right. And then life happened. And it was a pivot, but what came out of it was different than I thought it was going to be. Agreed. So that's the retrospective part for me. Yeah, and I think when we talk about life happening, it's not like I can be like, and then I'm gonna go and then I'm gonna get the job, and then I'm gonna drive my car and I'm not gonna have a flat. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that oftentimes like, and not that it needs further qualification. I mean, you said yours, I said mine. And I think this not qualified. That's what podcast is for. I just think that people, it's like I had a kid who bought a car, and I've been talking to this kid about buying a car, and I'm like, man, in fact, I gave him one of my cars until he could afford a car, and then he messed my car up, and I was like, okay, well, I want you to learn with my car. What is something that you could do? What is something that you could have done with my car so that you don't mess up your car? Like, what's something? Right. And because I'm like, I listed 5 things that you did wrong with my car. And you were like, oh, the oil light come on, so now I got to get an oil change. Oh, the tire pressure light came on, so now I got to go check my tires. Well, the proactive part, the active part is knowing when you need an oil change, knowing get your tires rotated, like that part. Not saying that life won't happen, but I think there are things that we can do to either prepare or prevent from those things happening. It's just some stuff we just can't plan for.
Yeah.
I think there's some stuff we can.
And if you're planning for those things, then it's going to stop you from being completely diverted from the path you were trying to set off on.
Yeah.
So yeah, preparation is a huge part of beginning a new journey or starting a new version of yourself.
And life will happen. I'm sorry. I don't want to, as I'm talking, it sounds like I'm minimizing the part that we can't control. That's a
I don't think you are, but
well, I just want to clarify. Like, I think that life will just happen. There's even if we played it down to the T, the way life has it is something will happen. I know every time I go like get my car checked out, it was like I've done everything that I thought I could do, but wait, what happened? They're like, oh yeah, this thing cracked, and I'm like, how could I predict that? And they're like, well, you just can't. Sometimes it's just, and I'm like,
sometimes when you drive a car 275 miles, 275,000 miles, it just happens that way.
They're like, you just can't predict it. So life happens. I just do want to say that.
So in this version creating of yourself, can you think of a person who was formative in creating any specific version of yourself?
Yeah. I can think of like Janice Bayouth. Well, before I go her, I got to go Miss Thomas. Miss Thomas in middle school. She was someone that just kind of like encouraged me to raise my hand. Middle school, just Derrick, I know you have something to say. I'm trying to like not to be the guy that's always, because I was engaged. I was like, yo, this is legit. Like, I love this stuff. But I think that you get that vibe of like, here Derrick go again, especially in middle school, right?
Oh yeah.
And then in high school, Janet Thomas was a choir teacher. She would kind of push me to the front, consistently pushing me to the front. Derrick, do you want to sing solo? Derrick, you want to be in a quartet? Derrick, you want to be a section leader? Derrick, do you want to? And I wouldn't have raised my hand for any of those things. And so she just kind of like put me in leadership positions. I could say early on, my wife, we got married when we were 20. And you talk about somebody that kind of saw through the crap and pushed and pulled you along, the development. She's been there, I would say, as I stepped into manhood. And she's had to tolerate and show compassion and grace through all the different versions of Derrick as an adult. And I value her and appreciate her input and her feedback and her patience. My kids, that had been very informative because as I was learning how to be a father, I used to tell my daughter, I was like, hey, I've never had a 10-year-old before, so you have to work with me. Like, let's do this together.
Let me write that down.
It's like, hey, I've never had an 11-year-old. Like, I tell every birthday, I sit her down, I'm like, hey, I've never had an 18-year-old before. You're going to have to help me with this one. And so my kids have kind of helped me grow up in a way, like they're looking at who I used to be, like through the lens of an 18-year-old, right? And they're like, Dad, I wish you would do this. And I'm like, I wouldn't have thought of that. Like, that's really cool. I appreciate it. Dad, when you say this or when you do this, it makes me feel like this. And I'm like, so kids help me there.
Let's pause right there real quick. So you have 3 children?
I have 2.
You have 2 children. Yeah. So on each of their birthdays, you sit down and have this conversation every year.
Yeah. Well, with my oldest, with my youngest, it's a little different because because he's 17 months behind my daughter. And so I can't say to him, I've never had a 17-year-old before.
You never had a 17-year-old boy?
That's the conversation. Okay. So it's like, I've had a 17-year-old before, but I've never had a 17-year-old boy.
And you do this every year?
So I've done it for maybe the last 6 or 7 years. Like when they came into like the teenage years, I think I worked with kids. And so I've worked with kids enough for this to be familiar, right? I worked with these kids enough for my kids to be familiar. And so I'm starting to see some things at home that I see out in the community. And so I can kind of have a reference point. Right. It wasn't until the last maybe 6 or 7 years that I've worked with older kids. And so now as I'm starting to work with older kids, my kids are also older. So it's all new. Right. And so I'm telling them, hey, I've never had a 13-year-old before. So you're going to have to help me with this. So every year since then, sitting them down saying, there's some stuff you're going to go through that I've never had to parent through. And so let's partner together to navigate this space together because I don't have the information. I don't have the knowledge, like the firsthand personal knowledge.
Right.
I can read a book, and this is what 13-year-olds generally go through, but it's not you.
Absolutely.
And so, can you help me? Can we partner together over this next year to navigate whatever 13 looks like for you? Because if you remain eager to learn, and I want to learn you, then I think we're going to navigate this well together.
And so you said, your daughter would say, "Dad, I wish you would, whatever." How much weight do you put on that?
Yeah. So part of it is being humble enough to let a 13-year-old sit you down as a parent. And tell you
that's
something.
huge. That's why I'm just so engaged in this because it's a very unique process for me, and I'm liking what I'm hearing. So tell me about it.
They'll tell you, but I also have to understand that they're 13 or that they're 18 or they're 17. And so the older they get, the more weight I put on it. But early on, it was, I remember my daughter, she had to be 2 or 3 years old. She's putting together full sentences, and there used to be this point where she would come lay her back on my knees and her feet on my chest. And so it's almost like she could do a sit up and give me a kiss. I'm just trying to paint the picture for you all. And she would put her feet on my face and I would like nibble her toes and I'd be like, just got this is before the feet got stinky, right?
Right. That would be gross for teenagers.
Listen, I tried to do it. She did not like it. She was not a thing.
Beat you up. My daughter does jujitsu. She will literally choke me out.
She was like, she acted like she was going to kick me in the face. I was like, now the conversation gonna turn. Right? Anyhow, but she went at the end of our tickle fest. She would sit up and then she would grab my face and she'd be like, "Daddy, I love you." And she with both hands squish my face together and I'd be like, "I love you too." And she'd be like, "Daddy, you're the best daddy." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm like, thank you so much." And she's like, "Can I have fruit snacks?" She was buttering me up, right? So it's like, even at 2 or 3 years old, I'm trying to listen to what she wants, but I also have to understand that she's a 2 and 3-year-old. And so she'll give it to me in that perspective, right? And so even as a 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old, I'm sitting them down and I'm listening to them tell me what they want. And I put weight on it, but I also have to understand that they're 15, 16, 17, 18-year-olds. And so I have to look at it through their lens. My daughter, "Daddy, I may need more money on my card." Right. What I hear is, so now we got to talk about money management, right? Because now the next question is, why do you need more money on your card? "Oh, I spent the money that you gave me. What did you spend it on?" So now we're having a conversation. Yeah. So now it's, instead of me saying, "You're right, babe, you need more money," and I put my money in the card, now I got to have a conversation because Daddy ain't gonna always be here to put money on your card. Right. I probably will. I just want to be honest.
In case you're listening, Daddy will be there.
I'm probably 30 years old. She's gonna be like, "Daddy," I'm gonna be like, "Come on. I want to be that daddy." But I think that there's a part of it that puts the appropriate amount of weight for the situation and the age. I want to open the door, and the weighty part that they feel is I have access to my dad. That's the most important weight that we can put on the conversation. Yeah. The second part is me actually listening to them and evaluating and trying to not only hear what they're saying, but look past what they're saying. And I think that's the process that has developed over the years.
Man, and what I love about that is, if we're in a world, like I'm trying to help people be more authentically themselves. Yeah. That's what I want to put out in the world. And a lot of people don't tie their kids into that. They don't tie, how do my kids see me, into, am I being myself? It's like when they walk through the door, what happens in there isn't the same as what happens out there. Yeah. And sometimes your kids see that, and I mean, that can affect them in very big ways, depending on what the change is. Yeah. So sitting down and having that conversation, I got to talk to my daughter all the time about all kinds of things. She's my oldest of 4. So, but I've never had that conversation. And I want to now. Her birthday is next month. Ooh. And I'm like, yeah, let's do that. Let's, I'll sit down with her and say, I've never had a 14-year-old. So, what do you want to see? How can I help you as you become a 14-year-old for the first time? Is there anything that you think I can improve on as a father? Yeah. And I think that would be so insightful because, kids will give it to you straight. They will. They will lay it out for you sometimes. And sometimes it doesn't feel so good. But if I feel like if you really just get ahead of it like that
Yeah.
and give them the opportunity to share their feelings is, for one, they're going to have more grace, because generally when anybody feels hurt, they have more grace for things when it gets stressful.
Yeah.
But then also, like, you're really going to have an opportunity to like implement that and really try to help them along, because the teenage years are hard.
Absolutely.
And so why would I not do that to try to make it easier? Like, that's excellent. Like, thank you for sharing that.
No problem. And I think some of that is like, if that's like it goes like the lines of communication of like us talking to our kids all the time, playing with them. Mm-hmm. We're the center of their universe. And over time, I believe, like, if I could use like an artery or a vein, like it's open, and over time, other things start to get into that artery or that vein. And you get social media, and then they go to school, and they get teachers, and they get friends, and they get pop culture, and all these things begin to like impede the flow of information from my child and I. So for me, whenever I sit them down, it's almost like going through that mug and clearing out that mess. And I'm like, I want to let you know that regardless if you take advantage of it or not, that I'm your father, that I want to be in your life, that you can always come to me. And sometimes I may bust up in this room, up in your space, and be like, yo, what's going on? How you doing? I haven't seen you in a while.
Right.
Come talk to me. Let's go grab some ice cream. Like, I want to make sure that you know that those lines of communications are open, because while we know that there's sometimes they'll give it to you raw, there's other times where they're afraid. Mm-hmm. Right?
And they won't give it to you at all.
They won't give it to you at all.
They'll give it to you raw, but they won't give it to you at all.
Listen, that middle space is almost inhabited. That's no man's land. Like, you have this point in time, or maybe depending on the topic of the subject, they'll be completely open or completely closed.
Right.
And the closed part, and I do it with myself and my friends as well. There have been times where I've been completely transparent, and there's other times where I've been 0 dark 30, and you ain't heard from your boy in a while. And part of it is like, I'm trying to work through some stuff, or I'm embarrassed about what I'm going through, or maybe I don't feel like the people around me have the capacity to support me in this area or this space. And so it's like, I try to like seclude myself and figure it out, which is horrible, by the way. Yeah, I don't recommend anybody.
My best friend is like that, and I hate you. I'm like, where did you go?
Yeah, and it's just, we're working through some stuff. Just working through it. It's like, bro, like, I wish we could retire that line for all of eternity.
So I don't know if it's my ADHD, but I don't do that.
No?
Like, I'm bad about keeping up with relationships. Mm-hmm. But if my friend, who's my friend, calls me and I'm having a bad day or whatever, unless I'm just like super anxious and I just can't talk on the phone, right? Then I'll still send them a text and be like, just today's not a great day, whatever. But like, if, especially if somebody's like, hey, I want to hang out, I like seeing my people. That makes me feel better. Yeah. And I can't not talk about the thing. Mm-hmm. Like, it's going to come up. It's like, man, you seem a little different. It's like, well, here's what's happening right
I'm glad you said something.
It's like, as I was going through my, transition with the fire department. Yeah. We didn't talk about it because we just hadn't had people over yet. And as soon as people came over, they're like, hey, how's things going? I was like, well, everybody come around the table. Let's talk about what's going on with Bruce. And he was like, because I don't like that feeling of knowing that there's this big piece of information that's not being addressed. It makes me feel like, it makes my skin crawl. Yeah. It makes me feel like I'm in somebody else's body. Mm-hmm. And like, so that to me is what I want to share with people, is like, if you are able to get that piece of information and give it some air, like let that scar heal, then that the divide is so much smaller. Mm-hmm. Like, people are able to get closer to you, like, and you feel better. Like, if people can't get to you, they can't hug you. They can't, they can't give you that support that you need. So I'm like, let's just get rid of this thing where we hide from people, and like, just say, hey, it's bad. If you want to come hang out, sure, but it's bad right now. So like, you're welcome to be in my space if that's what you want to deal with, versus being like, I'm just not going to answer your phone calls for 2 months. Yeah. Like, I'm just like, where did you go? Yeah. Are you dead? Yeah. Like, that's, don't
make me roll up on you.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think when we're talking about like being able to show up in our most authentic selves, and I know that was the way that we introduced the show, of like, what kind of compromises do we concede to make people comfortable around us? Or like, why do we not show up that way? Or do we concede these spaces so that we can be in these spaces? I think that as somebody who, like, I really try not to, I say this, and I have a couple of friends who get absolutely annoyed. I say, man, I'm a lot sometimes. Like I'm heavy sometimes. They're like, why do you say that?
Right.
Right. Like if we opted into being your friends, like, and you don't share with us, it's almost like trickery. It's almost like you're
catfishing.
You're manipulating my decision, right? It's like you're presenting this person, and then we show up, and it's not even the real person that we're getting. Like you got some stuff that you're dealing with, and you won't let us friend you, which is strange because like if someone else did that to me, I would feel offended.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm like, bro, you've been handling this by yourself the whole time, and you didn't say nothing. Like I'm doing what I would be upset for other people doing.
I feel like it's a super common thing for people to forget that friending is a two-way street.
Ugh.
It's like, I friend you, you don't friend me. Like that's whenever you need friending, I friend you.
Yeah.
Don't friend me. I'm having a tough time. Don't friend me.
Man.
Right now. And it's like, that doesn't sound very fair.
It doesn't.
Like, I want to friend you. That's why I became your friend.
Yeah.
To friend you and to have you friend me. And so like, that's a whole different thing, but that's whenever you're not being authentic, you're trying to hide something.
Yeah.
You don't want them to see that part of you. Mm-hmm. And as a friend, if they really are a friend, they want to be there. Yeah. They want to be, they through thick and thin, like whatever, they want to be your friend. Yeah. And if they don't, then I personally would rather find out sooner rather than later. Whenever it comes to the time where it's like, I can't handle this by myself. Yeah. I need you. And they're like, oh, I didn't sign up to actually friend you. I wanted you to friend me. I didn't want you. They want the reverse relationship. It's like, oh, that's going to be tough because it turns out the people you thought were there for you are not. Yeah. And so that's like, my friends know that I will cut somebody off quick. This is where it gets deep on my side. Is I haven't talked to my mom in almost a year because our relationship had gotten toxic. Yeah. And for me, it was like, I don't need toxic in my life. Yeah. Like, so at some point, hopefully something gives and we can, level it out. But right now it was way too toxic for me. And that was like, I don't separate. Yeah. Where you do your thing, I'll do mine. Yeah. But the people who are inside my circle, like they know they can call me anytime and I'll do whatever I can to help them. Yeah. Because I'm your friend and I want to be whatever I can. Whatever you need me to be, I want to be that for you. Yeah. That's what friendship is to me.
Yeah. And I don't know that people feel like, I say people who fit in this category feel like they can operate in that space safely. Mm-hmm. Right. Which I think safety, there's lots of components of like previous environments that I've been in that are similar where I didn't feel safe or people who I thought I could trust turned out to be untrustworthy or, I think there's all these things that come into play as to why people don't invite other people into that space or why they don't create that sharing space. But I think whatever it is, man, like we got to get over it, bro. Like our isolation is detrimental. It is. Like when we get in that, because I know for me, bro, I will make up a story quick in my mind. Like I will stew in my own space and I'd be like, I asked them for help. They said they couldn't help. I always help them out. This means they don't really respect me as a friend. And I ain't never going to ask them to, it's like, that's a slippery slope because then you find out that maybe they had something going on and they wanted to help and they just couldn't, but they didn't communicate that. Yeah. And then it was like, man, I done made you out to be a whole villain, and you were supposed to be my friend. Like I've given you a position and then I villainize you for not being able to do that position well without knowing the whole story.
And I think an important component of that for me is showing up as yourself from the start. Mm-hmm. It's like some people show up as this person that they think their new friends want them to be. And then whenever they're called on as that person, they can't provide it. Yeah, it's unsustainable. Versus being like, it's not sustainable. Yeah. Versus being who you are. Like, once again, my friends know, like, I'm not here for BS. Like, if you don't want to be my friend, like, don't claim to be my friend. Like, if I call you and invite you to hang out 3 times in a month and you say no every time, I'm going to stop calling you. Yeah. Because that's not friendship to me. Yeah. Like, and there's a difference between me saying like my friend will invite me out all the time. I'm like, I'm not that person. Yeah. I'm not going to my family life is very important to me. If you want to hang out with me, come kick it at the crib. Yeah. Or set up some sort of family friendly environment where we can go kick it as family. Yeah. That's the kind of friends I need. And they know that about me. They're not going to say, well, I called you 3 times and invited you to the club 3 times and you didn't show up. It's like, duh. That's who I was when you met me. Like, nothing's changed. So versus you're like, hey, I invited you to dinner. I invited you to meet me out at this thing. I invited you to meet, and you just keep ghosting me. Like, we're obviously not right for each other.
Oof. And that's tough sometimes because I think we get caught up in niceties. Like we want to be seen as the good person or the nice person. And so we tolerate stuff or we try to put on an air that makes everybody feel comfortable. And showing up your most authentic version of yourself initially is hard, bro. I mean, because if that's as transparent as I get, if there's no other version of me, and this is the most honest and sincere version that you're ever going to get, and you don't like it, people pleasing.
Yeah.
I think that's something that, talk about the journey and arriving and developing. That's something that I struggle with right now because a yes feels so good. Like when people like you or when they want to meet with you or you have something that they have versus, I think I've been a part of like this connection circle and I put my place there. I put my value in that space for so long that when I'm unable to do it, sometimes I feel like, man, what am I doing? But what I've learned now is like to be more selective with my yeses so I can get full yeses instead of partial yeses, right? It's like we met for coffee the other day, and not only was I late initially, but I walked around outside for like 15 minutes on the phone call because I said yes to something I shouldn't have said yes to, but it was like, and it was a mentee, and I was like, man, like he calls me, he needs me. But at the end of the conversation, I was like, man, this wasn't even really important. Like I said yes to something that I knew wasn't important because I wanted him to feel like he could call me and I pick up and, it's all this other stuff. But,
well, see, and what for me is important there is that you realize I don't care. Like, because I already know about you that you're a person who is there for the people who need you. Yeah. So this guy, he called, he needed something. This morning, you were late because your daughter had a flat. Yeah. Your daughter needed you. Yeah. You're going to show up for the people who need you. So a lot of times that person is running behind because they had another thing to do, but they know that you made a commitment to me. Yeah. So you're still going to be here. Yeah. But you might be a little late. So for me, I'm like, I'll take that dependability, knowing that you're going to show up at some point. Yeah. It may be like 15, 20 minutes late, but like I'd rather take knowing that you're definitely going to show up than like I don't know if I can actually count on you. Yeah. Because you're not a person who's actually there for the people who you make commitments to.
I appreciate it.
And as a mentee, like, we talked about before, is like a mentee's for life. So you made a commitment to that person, whether, you talked about having to coach him about what urgent is. Exactly. And that's, that's a conversation that y'all could have, but you still made that commitment and you were honoring that commitment. It's like, damn, I haven't really got him to understand this yet. So I need to take this phone call until he understands this. And I respect the hell out of that.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
My wife doesn't love it. She's like, you said you were going to be gone for an hour and a half and you were gone for 2.5 hours. I was like, listen, it's kind of my fault because I did wait. But she's like, all right. So, I'm
sorry, wifey, whatever you are. Thank you. We appreciate you.
Well, it's funny because I used to be the late person. Yeah. Like, I used to be the person who was late everywhere. The fire department did a lot of things. It gave me a lot of things. It gave me like some structure and discipline. It taught me that being 15 minutes early is on time. And that's, the fire department, that's actually still kind of late. You kind of want to be like 30 minutes early. Really? It's like, so especially when you were like starting the process, it's like if you show up 15 minutes early, you're probably not getting a job. Like they want the person who's there waiting at 30 minutes early. Like that's, and they like really ingrained that in you. But it also gave me a really thick skin because I was just brutalized and, so much of who I was not acceptable for the fire department.
I've heard you say that a couple of times.
Yeah, being a person who's outspoken, who has their like own individual thought. Yeah, not like it's not that I didn't want to be part of a team. I did. I just had thoughts and ideas and input. And whenever you work in emergency services, there's a time and a place. I wasn't great at that part. Yeah. It was like, I'd have a thought, I got in trouble for talking back on a fire scene once. It was like, I had a thought and I was like, what about this? And they were like, do what you're told. And in an emergency situation, you do have to do what you're told. Yeah. But the way that they build that into you is by making you do what you're told all the time and never questioning
it. No nuance.
Yeah, it's like there's no nuance. And it's like, and maybe there was for other people. Yeah. But because of how I operate, I didn't get it early. So then it was just hammered all the time, everywhere. Not everywhere I went. Like there was a station I went to that was actually really great. Yeah. But where I spent the majority of my time, they just hammered me all the time with, both you're not here to think. And secondly, you're not one of us.
Wow.
And that was super hard. You know, you spend 24 hours at a time with somebody, an entire group of people who hang out outside of work and don't invite you.
Yeah.
Who, you know, watch things purposely that, you know, whenever I was studying, it's like, oh, Bruce really wants to see, let's watch this thing. And they would, and I'm like, I thought we were going to, no, we just watched it without you. Like driving me farther and farther away from the group whenever these people have your life in their hands at times.
Yeah.
That's
tough, man.
That's very tough. But coming out of that, it helped me very quickly say, never again.
Yeah.
Never again am I going to let somebody determine my self-worth on a daily basis. That's for me to do.
Yeah, I wonder how many people concede to fit in, though. Right?
Oh, so many.
That's some of the things that we're talking about today. I mean, it's
so many. Like the fire department is all about becoming part of the whole. And for the duty of it, it is important. But the culture is so toxic because there is a room for the individuality. Yeah. And then at the highest levels, they're starting to teach that. But at the lowest levels, it's not there's not taking root.
So there are people that are literally shaving off parts of their personality.
Oh, yeah.
In order to fit in.
I mean, I did it for the first 4 years. Like I shaved down till I was unrecognizable to myself for the first 4 years because it was like, I'm a talker. I love talking. I love having conversations. Yeah. It was like, don't talk. You talk too much. Stop talking so much. Jeez. And it was to where I just walked around like a zombie all the time, didn't have any thoughts because I was told not to do that. Yeah. And that killed me. And so I didn't realize how bad it was until I got out of the field and got into public education. And it was like, hey, you can talk now. You can go talk to big groups of people.
Like, we want you to. That's your job.
And it was like, and all of a sudden, like I felt like a balloon, so much weight was lifted off me. I was like, oh my God. I did not realize that I had totally transformed who I started to who I was now. Yeah. And even then, like the trauma didn't go away. It's still like, I still was paranoid all the time that somebody was going to do this or that. And there were still people who didn't want me to succeed. And, there was a lot of pressure to do certain things. And then leaving the fire department, having that same feeling of the way that, there was still so much weight there. Yeah. I still woke up and went into work with so much pressure to be something I wasn't. Wow. And it's like, now I'm actually seeing for the first time, like, this is what it actually feels like to show up as yourself. Yeah. Do you think that there's a balance? Because I think of the value of fitting into a system. I know the importance there. But I feel like this next generation is so individualistic that they have. I don't want to make a statement. We have so many more personalities and preferences to cater to in the public space now than I think before. Then it was like if you have the money, or if you are the owner of the business, or you are in some sort of management supervision, then you're the one that has all the personality. You suck all the air out of the room. You have all the decision making. And then everyone else you do what you're told. Whether you worked at Macy's or whether you worked at an assembly line or whatever it was, it was two personality types. Either you're doing the telling or you're doing what you're told. Right. Now I feel like there's so many more things to account for that it either slows up the process. What am I trying to say? I wonder what's the middle of like. Yeah. And you started to say, do you think there's any value in the system of, like people playing roles? I think is what you were getting to. Yeah. And I do. Like, I mean, I definitely, like, the fire department provided a lot of understanding. Like the chain of command, I think is a very smart thing to implement in a business. Okay. Having somebody who is at the head, who has the biggest vision. Yeah. And then having people below them who have smaller and smaller vision and have smaller and smaller oversight, but they pay attention to what they're supposed to pay attention to. Like when you do that, everybody can be more focused. There's, it talks about the span of control of the division of labor. Whenever you have a span of control that's from 5 to 7 people, you're able to maximize their talents. Okay. You're able to maximize their efficiency. Yeah. And that to me is something that is very useful, to be able to like have a team, say everybody. And now this is not a part that was hugely brought in. It was like, that's where it stopped. It's like, I'm the boss of these 5 to 7 people. These 5 to 7 people listen to me and they talk to the 5 to 7 people directly below them. The difference for me is I have 5 to 7 unique individuals that bring different talents to the table. I listen to them, see what information they have to provide for me. Then I put them to work at what they're going to succeed best at. And that's that. If I was a CEO, that's what I would do. That's how I would, build the company out. Is that everybody would have something that they're directly responsible for, but it's not only something that they're good at. Hopefully, it's something that they love. And they're able to be passionate about. So they're not only working hard because they're trying to be a good employee. They're doing work that they love. So it's it's not even a question.
I like the concept of everyone having space to breathe into a project, to bring their own creativity and problem solving skills and awareness. It seems like it's more of that now in the workspace, and navigating all those personalities. You got to have effective leadership in place in order to navigate all those personalities, all those unique things. And I think that we're in a space where we're transitioning out of the old mode of management into this new era of do what I said versus, all right, are we all on the same page? Right. And then moving forward. And any book that you lead, it's like, if you get the buy-in from the people, then you don't have to carry or push that vision. They'll do it for you.
Absolutely.
Right. But I think transitioning from, showing up to, and this is what in my mind, I imagine it is, because my dad used to carry a briefcase. Like when he was in management, it was like showing up to work with a briefcase is different than logging on from a coffee shop, that has Wi-Fi.
I don't think I could manage effectively a complete remote business.
You don't think so?
I don't think I could. For me, the in-person, for me, I think that remote is very good for passing along information, working together on projects, like anything that is purely, it's already agreed upon. There's no persuasion needed. There's no motivation needed. You don't need to feel energy. But whenever it talks to getting buy-in, whenever it comes to getting persuading somebody, making sales pitches or trying to pitch your vision on a project, whatever, I feel like to do that well, you have to be in person. I don't think you have. Yeah, I do. He's
I'm sticking to it.
I'm sticking to it. For me, I know that every, whenever I was, in fundraising, every deal I closed was in person. And it's we may have had calls on, Zoom. We may have talked on the phone. Nothing ever closed until they were able to get in the same room with me and feel my energy. And then they were like, yep, I want to sign on with you. You're somebody I want to work with. And you can't transmit your energy through technology yet. I'm sure there might be a way soon, but
I think we're figuring that space out. I mean, we're going to have to. I mean, the competitive market is, I believe, is going to be 75% remote, especially if it's not a production type of industry. Like if it's all sales, if it's all service based, then I think that that's going to be a part of contract negotiations now is half remote or, whatever it is. But I think, as we're talking about this concept of, having to shave off our personalities or parts of ourselves in order to fit, or how can we show up our most authentic selves? I think part of that has to do with how we shape individuals from birth, right? I know that the school system is very rigid, a rigid place, and they teach toward the middle instead of the top or the bottom. And then other places teach to the bottom, and everybody else in the middle of the top is, dog eat dog.
And generally for the school system, it's all taught towards being an efficient worker, basically. We homeschool our kids. So anybody who knows me knows I'm not a big fan of the school system. I think that there is so much good that could be done there that's being ignored. So I'll let you get back to it.
But I'm just saying, I think that that's going to have to change, right? Like when we set up our school system, in the early 1900s, it was industrial based. And so
it had to be for the country to survive, really. It needed to be that. And I get that, but it's really time for an update.
I absolutely agree. I mean, when you talk about the rigidness of a factory, We needed to replicate that in the classroom. We need to put, rotation on the bell schedule. We needed to have rows, and we need to have all eyes facing in one direction. And I think that unless we evolve and change with the industry, then we'll continue to set people up to be carbon copies of each other.
Now, I'm thinking back, the first time I met you, we were at a networking thing I think it was at PAL, and the superintendent of Oklahoma City Schools was speaking. Yeah. And he was talking about how they're building in these new STEM packages, which it kind of sounded like what we're talking about. I didn't do any further research because I don't send my kids to school, but I was curious as to if that was a thing that was really taking hold, if they really are trying to change the method in which education is given. Yeah,
I think they want to early on. What do they call it? It's called ICAP. It's like individual student something plan, and they're really trying to find out early on kind of these interest paths of students and individual career something. Anyhow, and so what they're doing with the $1 billion bond that we just passed in Oklahoma City Public Schools is they're trying to create these on-site opportunities for them to supplement their learning. And so you'll have a very traditional way of learning where you have math and history and science and things like that. But also on site, what we've had to do with our schools here in Oklahoma City is they had to go to another place in order to explore different careers. Right. This is where our Metro Techs come in, our career techs. And so if you wanted to get outside of a non-traditional school path, then you had to spend half a day doing something else, or you had to do summer school or after school or something like that. Where they're trying to weave it into the traditional path now. So you don't have to go somewhere else. You can go across campus. And they're implementing this first at the high school level and then trickle down to the middle school. And I think that's really cool. I think they're starting to look forward and make college not the only entry point into professionalism, which I think is great.
Absolutely.
I also think we're about 80 years behind. Right?
That's generous.
Yeah. I mean, you go from parents who, like I said, who didn't graduate, and they, at 8th grade, 7th grade, picked up a, what do they call it? They call it a occupation is what they call it. Yeah, you became a foreman or you became whatever it is, and you learn how to do the thing in 7th and 8th grade. Yeah. And then they started pushing college, right? And then you go to college. That was supposed to be the entry point into professionalism. But what they did is they took away all the occupations. And so now people were going to get degrees, and they're coming back and working in fields that they didn't need degrees for. Yep. And so now we're starting to see that trend go back that way. And the reason I like it, to circle back around, is because now it gives our kids access to be individuals, right? It allows them to explore areas of their personality and their interests, and then they can move in that direction without accruing all the debt or wasting the time in college.
And they're actually leaving high school with a tangible skill.
Absolutely. Which used to be the case.
Yeah, which started out as the case, and then we went way away from that. And then you weren't even leaving college with a tangible skill. It was just with a degree. And no ability to be able to do a thing.
Absolutely.
So I think that's good.
And so the kids now, I think what we're seeing is that they're so tapped into who they want to be early. Right. And whether that is career or gender or sexuality or traditional family structure or whatever, education, whatever it is, we're tapped into this space earlier now where it's who do you want to be? And I think that the people who wasted half their life trying to figure that out is now pouring back into the system and saying, man, if I would have had somebody ask me this question or give me this opportunity in 8th grade, then I wouldn't have wasted these other 8 years trying to figure out what I know now. And so I think that's really cool. There's some caveats here and there as far as who do you want to be? I don't know that you can have one without the other, but I think that the individual part of not shaving off who you are in order to become what other people want you to be is the heart of the conversation. And I love that. Yeah. Who do you want to be? I don't want you. Is there an industry where you can step into that allows you to be your most authentic self Monday through Sunday? Is there an art? Is there a skill? Is there a tool that you can have in your hand? Is there an industry, a group of people that will allow you to step in and be the most authentic version of yourself? If there is, then let's figure out who you are so we can then identify the industry or the space that you want to be in.
And if I could have been within 10 miles of answering that question leaving high school.
Oh my gosh.
Like this podcast would be about 10 years old. I would have been in this space way earlier.
Yeah.
Like, because honestly, I didn't find out that what my biggest strength was having conversations and like, putting ideas together.
Yeah.
And like helping people, like how to put that all together.
Yeah.
I didn't know I wanted to put it together.
Oh my gosh.
Didn't even know it was an option. Like there's so many different things that were like barriers to entry to getting to this place here.
Yeah.
And if there would have been modes of, just getting some of the other stuff out of the way, first off, my first thing I wanted to do leaving high school was be a corporate lawyer.
Really?
Yes. Do you know why?
No.
Money. That was my driving thing is I wanted to make
lots of money.
I wanted to make money.
Yeah.
And then directly after that, like once I got to college and thought about what the courses would take, was immediately not that. I was like, I don't want to do that. That sounds terrible. But then I wanted to be like,
still sounds terrible.
Yeah, it still does. I wanted to be a publicist for for the entertainment industry.
Uh-huh.
And that to me still sounds good because of the networking part of it.
Yeah.
Of the part where you get out and you talk to people and you get to go to events and you like all that still sounds good. But it took me a long time to get to what actually was the root of that.
Yeah.
And it was about, communication and community.
Mm-hmm.
And like now that I get that, I was like, that's the thing I was looking for in all this other stuff I was doing.
Yeah.
And you don't need anybody to provide that for you. Like I'm going to start doing it right here from my sunroom in my house.
Yeah.
And, and as it builds out, we'll get bigger and bigger. And
I love that, man.
Yeah.
And that, to me, there's there's no, like when I think about people who feel like maybe it's too late, right? Or I'm stuck in this place, so now I got to do it. I know people that are in that space right now. That's like, I have a friend that lives out in Tennessee, and she's like, I've been teaching for 20 years, and I have so many more years to retirement because I started so early. And she's like, part of me wants to try something else, but 20 years? Like, I'm in. I don't feel like I have any other options. And I hate, it's unfortunate that when people feel like this is all I've known, and so this is all I'm going to do. And I understand the hesitation to become something different after you've solidified your identity in another space. Mm-hmm. And that's all people are it took me forever. Like when I did games and recs and things like that. And so when people in Oklahoma City saw me, they're like, oh, it's the sports guy. Mm-hmm. And I was like, ooh, like Oklahoma City, let me evolve, please. And it took for me to go outside of the state and do all these really cool things that when I come back and it's like, oh, it's the mentor. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, thank you. Like I wanted to do that here, but the people wouldn't let me change. And I can totally see someone saying, well, I'm the sports guy. So now I got to be the sports guy forever because I've invested so much time and energy in becoming that the people won't let me change.
I think it's called the cost in bias. Ooh. Whenever it talks about, I've already spent this much money, time, effort into this project. I have to see.
I got to finish it.
I have. Case in point, fire department.
Yeah.
Like 10 years when you become vested in retirement, 25 is whenever you get your full retirement benefits. Mm-hmm. I was in for 25. That was the plan. Because I was going to do 25 years because at that point, everything I put in is going to pay off huge.
Man.
I was miserable I was miserable in year one. In year one, I was miserable.
Yeah.
But I was convinced I was going to do 25 years. And I was resigned to do that until the situation became, so toxic that it was leave or get fired.
Oh my gosh.
And it was like, okay, God has obviously given me a sign. Go somewhere different. Do something different. Mm-hmm. It was like, okay, because I'd been thinking about it for a long time. Mm-hmm. I was terrified to pull the trigger because I spent too much into this. Yeah. It took me 2 years to get on, to physically get ready, to go through the interview process, and then start the job. The first year is a nightmare. You had to go through recruiting. I had to go to EMT school while doing my first rotations and having a new baby. I had spent a lot. My wife had to, take care of our family completely by herself for the first year. It was impossible to think, and now I just leave? Yeah. No. Yeah. No, I can't do that. And then,
I'm in too deep.
I'm in too deep. And guess what? I did leave, and I feel so much better. Sometimes making the decision to leave despite what you spent, is the better decision.
My goodness.
And it's, and like I said, I was put in a corner.
Yeah.
Like the choice was made for me. Like God was like, listen, I'm going to take it out of your hands for you because this is bad. Like I'm going to do you a favor. I'm going to do you a solid.
Yeah.
I'm going to just make this decision for you.
Yeah.
And it's like, now you can just choose how you want to eat this pill, but you're getting it. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then at that point, it was like, I can breathe.
Yeah.
It's like, there's so much more air in my chest. And now like, I feel bad for everybody else who's trying to fit themselves either in a way into something that is not right or in something that's not right.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it is the situation that you're dealt with and you do have to deal with it, but you can show up in a way that just creates more breathing room for you, right? And sometimes the way you create more breathing room is by changing the situation.
Ooh, that's tough, bro. Because people feel like, this is my livelihood, it's my retirement, I've invested time. And I think one of the worst things that I've ever put myself in is being in a space and then spending so much time and looking back, thinking like, man, I don't like. I do this sometimes with money. I'm like, man, if I would have invested then, you're looking 5, 6, 7 years down the line. Like, man, if I would have, there are people that talk to 18-year-olds and they're like, if you save $100 a week, now by the time that you're 30, you'll have, and people that are 30 looking back are thinking like, man, somebody will tell me that at 18 and it's like, but would you really have?
It's like, are you going to do it now?
Right, because you can start now.
And in 10 years, you'll look back and say,
exactly. And I think people feel like that about their careers of like, they're looking forward. And they're like, man, if I can just, but it's like, what's the sacrifice of moving towards that goal? Like, how much of yourself are you going to lose? Or how much of, your fire are you going to lose? Or how much of your creativity are you going to sacrifice, like, in order to try to fit into this thing that everybody says you should fit in?
Right.
It's like everybody's trying to work for this 25-year full retirement type thing. And it's like, I guess that's cool for some people, but you have to assess whether or not that's your story.
There are a lot of people who love the fire department. They say it's the best job in the world. And for a lot of people, it is.
Yeah.
For me, it was not.
Yeah.
For people who look like me, it is often not. Especially like being a bigger dude, like being overweight and being black, that's not a good look. Like, you're supposed to be fit if you're a black dude.
Yeah.
If you're a fit black dude, things are totally different for you.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, like whenever I have a different idea, they're like, you're lazy. You're trying to get out of work. And I was like, no, I think there's a better way to do it. And
right.
No, you're just lazy. So that's a whole different feels. But
which is tough. Right? Because it's like, if we're trying to be an inclusive place, then let me represent the change that could take place. And that's unfair to say that someone is something because they look or sound or present a certain way. And I think that's the place. Spaces like that don't allow people to show up authentically. No. They want us to show, this is the box. Do you fit in the box? If not, then
get in the box.
Yeah, get in the box or go somewhere else. And I think, again, that's the part of me, I feel like I'm about to squirrel. The part of me that understands the value of the box also wants the box to change.
Right.
It's like one of my like sub platforms is to represent to the world what professionalism looks like. Right? It's like,
maybe it's just not a box; it's a polygon. Like, I'm serious.
Whatever it is,
we change the number of sides and the size of it. It's where it's like, yes, you're still contained in something, but there's much more room for you to figure out different angles and find different space.
Yeah,
because I think that there does need to be constraints on certain things.
Yeah, and
honestly, like some of like my favorite things I've done, like with art and different creative stuff, has come from having strict constraints. So it's like it can create some awesome things, but whenever it's like, and then just like the box, now you can't move. You got 4 sides to look at this from.
Yeah,
that's not a whole lot. Like, maybe we need just a few more sides, a little more space.
And we miss out when we don't include opportunity for other shapes to be involved.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. I think if this is the shape that you want, then you get whatever fits into that box, and that could be by design. Absolutely fine. But I think that as we're talking about people showing up in their most authentic selves, how can we create spaces where people don't have to shave off very important parts of their personality in order to do the thing? Then I think that has to challenge the system, right? And I know we're talking about some very lofty concepts.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I think we're very like eagle view, bird's eye view, and I know those conversations are good to have, but eventually we have to settle somewhere. But I'm saying when I think about people being able to show up in their most authentic selves without having to shave off large parts of their personality, then you start to get into, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? And it's like, no, let's just figure it out when we get there. Like, do I want to include as many people as possible? If not, then, and this is a very exclusive group, then let's let it be exclusive for whatever reason, and then create other opportunities for people to fit in similar environments that may not be this one. And I know that's so vague, but I'm saying, like, I think that boxes or shapes, they exist for a very specific reason, and I want to challenge why those reasons exist. Yeah, because it's like I wanted to be a firefighter. I tried out 3 times to be a firefighter.
Really, you never told me that.
Never told you this. We was out at the OSU OKC location, and they do the run, and then the push up the roof, and then the pull the water hose, and then the drag the thing. And I came in, tested, got past the test. Physical test. Test got past physical test. And I was like, is there any particular reason why I can't advance? 1, they wouldn't tell me. And then 2, one guy was like, man, we just give points for certain things, man. I'm like, you're doing great, but there's other people. And I'm like, oh, that's whack. And so I moved on to a different career field. But I'm saying, like, I wonder if I would have gotten in as creative and as open-minded and as outspoken, but also as somebody that attempts to try to fit into different spaces, like how successful would I have been? And could I have done this if I had spent 15 years there? Just like exploring all these different things. And it's like,
I don't know, like you have a better ability to, as my wife, she put it really, really poetically on the last podcast, to be able to make yourself small. And like, I don't think that's a very good thing, but you do that.
I do that well.
And when you do that, the people like the alphas in the fire department say, okay, all right, you can get in line. All right, cool.
Yeah.
I'm not good at that.
No.
Whenever you're not good at making yourself small and saying like, oh, I'm sorry, like, yeah, let's do it your way. It's like, if you challenge people all the time, they don't see you as like as a maverick. They see you as a problem. Yeah. You are a problem. You are a nail that needs to be hammered down. Yeah. And so, I mean, if you just make yourself small, you're already down. You don't, so you probably would have done all right. Yeah. And, you're very personable. Like, they like funny people. Like, you would have done great. My friend Tommy, who's on there now, another black dude, he's really funny. Yeah. Not great at making himself small, but he's really funny. So even when people are like going at him, he can light him up, and then everybody else will laugh. Yeah. So then they know, ooh, I can't come at this guy. Yeah. I can't do it this way. Not with him. I didn't have that. Yeah. He is like, so I was like, the things I needed to make myself either small or protect myself, I didn't have them. And so for a lot of people, they're able to do those things and navigate the world. And like, for the time I was there, the amount of financial security it gave me the ability to see ahead and to actually envision a life in which I didn't do that, or, I did this or whatever, to actually like look at the future and not to how are we going to pay rent this month. Right. And so like as a career to like get to a different place, I mean, there was nothing else for me that could have beat it, but for the culture. Yeah.
I mean, I wonder how much time do we have?
I mean, we've gone a little over, but
I think this is a really good conversation.
Yeah, I think it's important
because I think that people, if I had to narrow down, like if we're using the fire department, not to single out the fire department, but we're using it. Yeah. If I wanted to be a firefighter, and they told me firefighters not only have to do this physically, but they generally talk like this. Their humor is like this. This is what the environment looks like. And I can match up who I am with what would be required in order for me to be successful. I think that would be an ideal entry point into the profession. But I think the bad part is that's not what happens. I don't know that they say, this is the type of personality you have to have. This is the type of character you have. This type of, they say things like, well, hard workers, committed, long term. They say things like that. But it was like, if I could look at the industry and I could say, I can fit, either I can fit how I am, or I'm willing to shave myself down in order to fit. I think it gives people the opportunity to, one, either decide to fit and shave and do, or create other avenues. Mm-hmm. And I'm not, I have many things going through my mind. What I don't want to do is change. I understand why basketball players look a certain way. Mm-hmm. I understand why football players look a certain way. Like, football players, they just need more muscle mass. Like, you're literally running your body into other human beings at 19, 20, 21 miles per hour. You got to have muscle under the pad. And I understand that.
Right.
But if somebody who didn't have muscle wanted to play the sport and they're like, well, I really, bigger. Yeah, I really want to play football. Like, can I stay this size and play and be successful? Or do I have to change my... I hate that I even brought that up because it's such a lofty example. I'm just saying I want to be able to I want people to be able to say, can I play football? Can I be a firefighter? Can I be a graphic artist? Can I be a business owner? Can I be... And what does it take to be that? And if not, if I don't have that, can I create another place where I can still do the thing without fitting in this box?
Yeah, I mean, like
that's so lofty, though, Bruce.
And both of those examples, no, you can't.
You don't think so?
No, you can't create another place where you can go play pro football. No.
There's not one that exists.
The XFL has failed 3 times. Like, yeah, obviously, it's pretty hard to create another NFL.
Yeah.
The fire department is the fire department.
Yeah.
Like, there's no other place.
But we have like volunteer firefighters, don't we?
Yeah, we do, and nobody takes them seriously.
Really?
At least the fire department doesn't. And to get this, our fire department is one of the best in the United States.
Really?
Like cutting edge, like
that's cool.
The science, the measures in which they take to fight fire and prevent fire, both cutting edge, like the best in the country. Mm-hmm. But the culture is probably honestly one of the best in the country as well. But just the culture of the fire department as a whole is one of otherdom and less than. And that's, and part of it is because there are some good reasons that provide this bad culture, which is you have to look away, which provides confidence in the public. Like you have to be away all the time. And that's, some of the things to how you behave has to be above reproach, all these things, like in public at least. But there's also things that have nothing to do with that. It's like the way a person eats has nothing to do with their public, persona, but they will pick you apart if your plate's too big for, the one guy, like, oh, look at his huge plate, man. You take a freaking circus animal, jump over that. Mm-hmm. Like there was a guy who would just ride me the way I drove. He's like, look at you, the way you hold your hands. You look like you're driving a damn bus or something. It's like, I'm at 10 and 2. Like, what else do you want me to do? Like, I'm learning this thing. Yeah. I'm driving a fire engine. It's huge. Like, and you're barking at me. So yeah, I'm nervous. I might look a little clenched right now. Yeah. But they'll just ride you. And there's nothing, I don't think, beneficial long-term for that, because there's all these traumas that just slowly build up. And all of a sudden you stop trusting the people you work with.
So the question is it important to not budge on who we let in industries like that? Because you have to have a certain...
They let me in.
Well, I'm saying...
But they got me out, so...
But for there to be, like, when I think about the Army, right, it's like... or even law enforcement, like, I think about the officers that I'm friends with, and they talk about the number of officer fatalities increasing because of their they hesitate to shoot. Right. And it's like you're taught, like ingrained, like get control of the situation and then assess everything afterwards. Like if you go in trying to assess, then that's when, civilian casualties go up, officer casualties go up. And so they're taught to go in and get control of the situation and then we'll de-escalate instead of like de-escalate and get control and then, all that stuff. So it's like when I think about the personality, the character type that these officers have, it makes sense to me that, the casualties or the way that people go in, and everybody's like, why do our officers have to be this way? Can't they have additional training? Can't they have? And the officers are like, yeah, we'll do the training, but when you got a gun in your face, like, what do? And we're getting people that are dying because they don't fit this personality style or they don't fit this character style. We need people to come in, guns blazing, get control, and then we'll de-escalate afterwards instead of trying to come in and deal with all this other stuff. And so for me, when I'm thinking about law enforcement, it's like, okay, while I would love for my local law enforcement officer to be in touch with his or her feelings and to be emotionally astute, it's like the other part of me needs them to gain control. And so do I want to have officers? Do I want them to create training that allows for leeway for more officers that aren't this do what you told type of mentality? Or do they need to have that switch?
I see. What I think it is there needs to be more segmentation in the job responsibilities of the police department.
Okay.
Like, because there's a lot of check welfares. Like there's a homeless guy laying on the side of the road.
Yeah.
The police are called to check welfare, right? They don't need to be there.
So there's no gun on hip that needs to show up for that.
Exactly. There's no need for the police to be there right off the bat.
Right.
Like there's no implied threat.
Yeah.
But they show up and their job is to deal as if there's an implied threat. Like their job is to walk in and assess the situation and get under control immediately. Okay. So they don't walk up to this, this dude who's likely got some sort of mental problem. Mm-hmm. They don't say, hey man, what's going on with you? They say, show me your hands.
Yeah.
And he's like, he might hear voices. You don't know what's going on in his head.
Yeah.
So if he did have a weapon, he might reach for it because maybe that's, Charlie, who he knows whenever that voice comes, he's got to do a specific thing.
Yeah.
So, but they're going to react in a way that's like, oh, he's reaching.
Yeah.
And they're going to pull the gun. And that's how people who had no reason getting shot end up dead.
So do we need to expand the training of police officers, or do we need to include people in the force that are unique to that demographic? I
think that it's take away responsibilities of police officers. I don't think that they should be social workers.
So we should send social workers on those.
I think our social worker, that system needs to be completely revamped. And that should be the person who goes in that call. The fire department shows up. They handle any medical issues. Yeah. A social worker comes and helps with the mental issues.
So do we give social workers guns?
No, they don't. Once there's an implied threat, call the police who are there to assess that.
So I think this is where, so now we can provide nuance for people that, when we go out to handle situations like this, I think that there are 1 of 5 people that we can call. Right now, there's 1 of 2, maybe. Right? And so that's where I think when I'm talking about allowing for other personalities to fit into this particular system, do we give officers that additional training, or do we provide space for other people who want to be in law enforcement, but maybe don't want to do traffic stops, right? And I think,
for me, I see where you're going.
Okay,
but I want that to be separated from the police, because I think that you're right. I think that dealing with the criminal aspect does take a certain type of mentality, which is quick to make a judgment, quick to to analyze the situation, to profile. And as much as I don't like the idea of profiling,
it's a quick process.
But that's how it works. It's like you built, you've got all these different recordings in your head from all your different experiences, your trainings, and you just run through them as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
What fits about the situation that's the same?
Yeah.
It's the same with fighting a fire. You look at the fire and it's like, well, this is what I've learned about fires. This looks like this kind of fire. I'm going to fight it like this kind of fire. Yeah. Right. This looks like this type of situation. This person looks like they're under the influence of this thing. I'm going to handle this like that situation. Yeah. That's not the same as having, dealing with a person who's laying on the ground, and is likely not a threat. He very well could be a threat. Yeah. But you can't treat people like that all the time.
I agree, but my question is do we expand the individual, or do we expand the box?
I think that sometimes the box needs to be turned into 2 boxes.
Okay.
Because I really don't think that trying to fit a social worker into the police department is the thing, because first they're going to have to go through recruit training. They're going to have to go through all the different stuff that builds a police officer. Yes. And then they were going to say, okay, now go be a social worker. It's like, okay, wink. Yeah. They're going to go be a police officer because you trained me for, 2 years to be a police officer. Yeah. I'm going to go police, and I'm going to report it like a social worker because that's the part of my job I do now. Yeah. Right. So like, I just don't think that there's a model of that in which they are, unless they are like police officers in name only.
Yeah.
And like every part of the training is completely different.
Yeah.
And maybe like they wear the same, even, I don't even like them wearing the same uniform, because then
I agree.
Then the public, I agree. The optics are, well, they're this person just like that person, which, so one thing I loved about working in the fire department is whenever people saw us show up, they were always thankful.
Yeah.
Because whenever the guy in the blue polo shows up, they're like, okay, he's here to help. He's here to make my day better.
Yeah.
When the guy in the bulletproof vest shows up, my day is about to get worse.
Yeah.
Like, then there's nothing you can do to change that. Somebody's day is getting worse when the police show up.
Oh my gosh. That's so unfortunate.
I mean, it's unfortunate, but it's the job that they like. It's the job. Like, somebody needs to, like, something needs to be mitigated. Somebody has to go to jail. Somebody needs to be removed from the situation. A bad thing has to happen for them to do their job.
Yeah.
And it's not that they're doing a bad thing. It's just that for the receiver of that act, it's going to be bad because that's how it's resolved.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think, we're going to have to land this plane eventually. When I think about, we're talking about what pieces of us have we had to shrink or shave off, I think that there are some industries where people absolutely have to fit inside a box. And I think there are industries where there is no box, and people maybe, I don't know, I hate the analogy of the box, but it's like however you show up, right? There's space for it. And I think there are jobs that are along the spectrum where you get very little nuance to be who you want to be versus we just want to make sure you get the job done. And I remember being in New York in Hell's Kitchen, the Hell's Kitchen area, and we were having breakfast, and there was... And
no, that's not the show. That is a district of New York.
Yeah. And we were at this breakfast place, and when I told you there was all kinds of people there serving food, and I heard one of the people in the background, they're like, man, look at all the waiters. And then one of the waiters said, we don't care how you look as long as you can bring food to the table.
Right.
And I was like, whoa, we don't care how you look, as long as you can bring the food as long as you're clean, you're neat, and you can bring food to the table. And I mean, it was like, if you could put a combination of a person together, if you could Mr. Potato Head, a waiter, it was in the place. And we were just white, but the food was good. The service was nice. The environment was legit. And I don't know that we have evolved to that place where it's like, I don't care how you show up. There's some places on the spectrum that are like that. And there's other places that are like, we need you to look like this, dress like this, talk like this, act like this, respond and behave like this. Your body type needs to be like this. And I think in some places, as much as it pains me to say, I think that some of those places are necessary. The nuance is small.
I don't disagree. And what's important to me in my business aspect is like I want to coach people to be able to identify what's unique about them, how it's strong, and how to apply that to whatever field they're in.
I love that.
Because there is a place.
Yeah.
Like now in the fire department, it would have been hard, but if with somebody on the outside helping me look at it and coach me through it, I could have been successful there. Like because don't get me wrong, I was successful there. Yeah. I was unhappy. Yeah. And that's the big thing is I want people to be successful and happy. Right. I want them to feel like they're successful as themselves versus like, yeah, I'm getting all the success, but I don't even know who I am anymore. Ooh. And that's, if I had made 25 years, I would have been a shell of the person I am.
At the end, with all the money and the security and not even know who you are.
It's like, I don't even know what I want to do now because am I even here?
Yeah, you spend all that time doing it, being somebody else.
Yeah. That's
so how do we prevent people from doing that, right? Part of your coaching business, part of your desire is to help people identify who they are, sharpen their skill, tell stories, figure out what that is and where it is. And I don't know do you feel like that's new?
Storytelling has become, storytelling is as old as time itself.
Absolutely.
As old as people are, storytelling has been around. Right. But infusing it into our professions and our corporate lives, that, I feel like that's fairly new. Yeah. Like in the last 10 years, there's been a bunch of different speakers who come on the scene and talk about how storytelling is important for getting people on your side, how it's important for interviews, how it's important, being able to tell a story and ingratiate yourself to others it's so important because as humans, we desire to hear stories.
Yeah.
Like it is ingrained in us. Like it's how we're meant to encode information is through stories. So if your story is hidden, like you're hiding your story from everybody else, you are just folding into the fabric of everything around you.
Yeah.
Like versus, and this is the most important part, is getting to know your own story. Like so many people have had zero reflection on the span of their lives.
So good.
And if you don't reflect on your life, you don't even realize how much power is there.
Yeah.
Like there's the ability to make decisions is based on data, right? The better data, better decisions, right? If you have looked at none of your life and you're making decisions for you moving forward,
of your data,
you're not accessing any of your data. So how are you making the best decision?
Yeah.
But if you're able to go back, look at it, you can do this by yourself. A lot of people haven't done it because they're not committed to doing it.
Right.
2, they don't know how to do it.
Exactly.
And 3, they didn't even know it was a thing that they weren't doing.
Yeah.
And so for me, like I want to help people do that.
Yeah.
Like and then once you are able to tap into that, just tap into your story. For one, you can make better decisions. You might decide that the profession you're in is not where you want to be because you're like, wait a second, all these things are leading up to X, right? Or you figure out that there is an opportunity that you have not been capitalizing on. It's like, wait a second. So when I went to college, I did this thing.
Yeah.
In my first 3 jobs, I did this thing. And now I'm at this place that has this opportunity. I didn't even apply for it because I didn't realize for the last 10 years, I've been doing that thing. It was called something else.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And there's so much power in your own story. Like nobody else can take that. Nobody else can be you. Right? So that power belongs to you, whether you use it or not. That's your own decision. I think that people should use it. Yeah. I think that's what I'm trying to do here is, use my power of my story, which is I've been through some things. Yeah. I've seen some stuff. Yeah. And it has molded me into a person who can help people navigate things, but also I'm totally unafraid to talk about anything that's happened to me. Wow. And it has been a lot, but I think by sharing stories and helping people share theirs, it's going to open people up to this possibility that your story is one that's not being told. So there's power in that. Yeah. And you said something else I think is really important, that people don't even know their own story. They don't even know their own power. Right. And to me, that's when they just live life and they kind of taking it as it comes, which again, I think is one way to live. I don't think it's the best way. If we can be more active and less passive with our own story, then I think we begin to be more attentive and more reflective. But I think trying to figure out, having someone from the outside look in and be like, look at the thread that's a part of your story. I think that's powerful. And then that'll gives people the opportunity to take ownership of those things instead of, I don't know that people spend enough time reflecting and figuring out what their strengths are. Right? Oftentimes people will operate according to what people tell them are their strengths versus them saying, oh, that is my strength. And for me, the aha moment was whenever I was working, like my last position at the fire department, and I was, I was doing the fundraising for the race, and I was being told that the way that I was working wasn't good for the team. And I was like, but every task I've been given, every goal I was given, I've crushed. Yeah. Like, what, you're doing it by yourself. You're supposed to, work with the team. I was like, well, I asked for people to do things, and then they didn't do them. I just did it myself. Yeah. And I was told that was a weakness. Being able to be self-sufficient and self-motivated was a weakness. Turns out that's my biggest strength. Like, that's my superpower, is to be a one-man army when necessary and to be totally focused on a thing until the job is done. Yeah. And that's partially my ADHD, is that, whenever something excites me, I'm in it. Like, I'm about that thing. I'm going to, get all over. I'm going to find every crevice of it, and I'm going to build it out until it's finished. Yeah. That was a bad thing, even though the results said everything different. So you can't always listen to people. Absolutely. They have all their own other factors. They have their own story affecting what they say about your story. And likely they haven't looked at their story either. And that goes back to us talking about, like, what do you do with input of knowing what your story is, or knowing
like other people's intent for you, and when they provide you input, knowing if I should keep that or shed it, if I should process it. I think that's part of that process as well. Man, people shaving themselves, huh?
Yeah, man.
Trimming themselves, trying to fit in the spaces.
So let me tell you, this conversation went totally different than it was going to go the first time. Like when we first recorded, quote unquote recorded,
right?
And there was no sound. This conversation went totally different. I'm so glad.
Yeah.
Like I think that where we went was so much deeper and so much more about authenticity than it initially was going to. And I'm just really thankful that weird thing happened. And then we ended up just going a different direction and talking about like shaving yourself down.
Yeah.
I think, I want to throw this out there. If you enjoyed today's episode, check out our earlier episodes as well. And then consider subscribing, because I would love to be able to keep doing this for a long time. Yeah. And, the more subscribers, the more it gets out there and the more it provides support for it. And if you are struggling to show up as yourself and your content, your brand, your life, I would love to help you. Authentic Identity Management does brand coaching to help you align yourself with the identity you share with the world. It's exhausting to live someone else's life. Live authentically and access the potential that belongs only to you. Contact me on social or email Bruce at authenticidentitymanagement.com, or I'm on the socials, all the socials at Authentic Identity Management. That's Facebook, Threads, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And I think that I think that there's such a huge ceiling for this podcast and for each individual's potential that it's just not being tapped into. So like, I'm looking forward to so many different parts of this process, working with individuals and helping them, tell their stories, and also telling stories on this podcast. I think it's going to be so far 2 episodes in, and I think that we're just crushing it. Like this is going to be aired our 3rd episode, but this is our second conversation in. Yeah. And I think that, I think it's going to help people.
I absolutely agree. And as we close, if we're actually closing, it sounds like we're closing.
Yeah, I mean, we're at least closing the recording. We might still talk, but
I really think it's important for people to figure out who they are. And I say figure out. I know it's never something that you fully arrive at because we're always changing and evolving. But I think that process has to be intentional.
Yeah.
Right. If we don't spend time pursuing, observing, reflecting on what we've done, who we are, what we want to become, then we just kind of let life shape us, right? And I think when we let life shape us, we become a different version of ourselves than if we would have took our own lives in our own hands. And I think oftentimes people, they're more passive than they are active in the development of their own story. And so just for our listeners out there, our viewers out there, I just want to encourage people, like, reflect daily, reflect weekly, like, don't let life go too long without you asking yourself, am I who I want to be? Am I doing what I want to do? Because if you don't, you'll wake up every Monday, every month, you'll go years and you haven't checked in with yourself. And then, you don't take really hard right turns. You just kind of drift throughout life and you end up in places where you did not anticipate yourself ending. And sometimes it's good. Most times I think it's bad.
Yeah.
But I just want to encourage everybody to become an active participant in the development of their own story. Is this what I want to do? Today, tomorrow, next week? Is this who I want to be married to? Is this where I want to live? Is this the job I want to work? Like, constantly reflect. Because if you can tell yourself yes after you ask the question, then you're on track. If it's a no or I don't know, then it's a moment to reflect and change course. But I think we have to be active participants, because if we don't, we'll just wake up. I can't tell you how many times people have just woken up and they're like, who am I? What have I done? Where am I? How long have I worked this job? And you catch people, even the questions and the people on their deathbeds and in nursing homes and retirement centers. What's something you would have done differently? And they list all this stuff that they would have done differently. How cool would it be to address those things along the way instead of at the end of our lives?
And if you can't do it by yourself, get help. It doesn't have to be me. It doesn't, I'm not a therapist, for one. I'm not going to be able to, fix any mental problems you're having. Yeah. Except for possibly imposter syndrome. And that's a whole different episode. But if you need, you do need to assess your story. Yeah. But if you need help doing it, get help. Like I said, it doesn't have to be me. Like, it could be anybody. But take the time to put in the work, look at your story, and see what's there. Absolutely. Because if you haven't done it, you will be surprised. the biggest thing that I uncovered was how much my childhood trauma affected my decision making later in life. It was like, what?
Yeah.
I didn't even realize, I had no idea I was still reacting to this thing from my parents, arguing in front of me all the time, and how that affected my marriage for one. It was like, that was problematic.
Yeah.
Like, big time. But I was totally unaware of it. I had no idea the root of why I was triggered by some things, because I'd never looked back at my story. Like, really.
Wow.
So, Derrick Sier has been here today. Derrick, if people want to find more about you, where can they find out more about Derrick?
Derrick Sier on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter, but I'm not active.
Twitter's kind of hard.
Twitter's difficult. And then Threads, I'm not an early adapter. It usually takes a while for me to hop on board, but and then I never use Snapchat, even though I'm on there as well. You can go to revertmentoring.com, which is my website. DerrickSier.com is also another one where you can find me and contact me. Life of List is also another one, which is a book-based website based on my second book. Find me in all those locations.
To plug your book real quick. I know you got books on Amazon.
Yeah, so I got Small Stories, Big Teams, which talks about the individual's place on big teams. And I just kind of use these small stories to talk about how you can fit into group settings. Life of List is a book that's talking about, I used to interact with my kids in the car quite a bit. And I used to ask them, hey, tell me something about your day. And they'd be like, it was okay. So I started tasking them with, tell me something you learned. Tell me something cool that you did. And they would get in the car and they would tell me the cool things about their day, people that they connected with. I just gave them very specific prompts. Mm-hmm. And then they started asking me about my day. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute.
Wait.
Yeah.
We can discuss that.
So my deal was I would come back to them with a list of things. And so based on the things that I listed for that year, I wrote a book on all my observations of the year. So just encouraging people to show some gratitude through observation. Just kind of little things.
And that's Book of Lists?
That's Life of Lists.
Life of Lists. And the first one was?
Small Stories, Big Teams. My third book is called Hallway Leadership, and talking about the importance of adults being visible in kids' spaces. And so in school, it's the hallway, which is where the teachers are not in charge. That's kids' domain.
Right.
And so how do we become active, visible in kids' spaces as adults? And then the fourth book is called Dear Ricky.
I did not know you wrote 4 books.
Yeah. And so Dear Ricky is, it's almost like a journaling book. But I was talking to a guy named Shamil Gary, who's the co-author of this book as well. And I was like, man, have you ever went to school with somebody who was like smarter, more handsome, like they jumped higher, ran faster, they was good with the ladies, and then 10 years later, you're like, yo, what happened to that guy? And he wasn't as successful, or it didn't turn out the way he thought he was going to turn out. And he was like, yeah, man, I went to school with a guy named Richard. And I was like, if we could go back and give Richard a heads up on something, what would it be? And so we created these 4 main. It's physical health and wellness, mental health and wellness, affirmations, and relationships are the 4 categories. And we just wrote these little notes in these subsections of Ricky, drink more water, or Ricky, take naps, or Ricky, blood is not thicker than water, or Ricky, hang around old people, Ricky, get a mentor. And so it's called Dear Ricky, because we're writing these little notes
that's awesome.
Back to Ricky. And so it's a mentoring book that we use to help launch mentoring organizations. And so that's the 4th book. You can find that on dear-ricky.com. The other is lifeofthis.com. It's Small Stories. And Hallway Leadership you can find just by Googling Derrick Sier.
All right, man.
That was a lot.
That's a lot. You got anything, the last question, you got anything coming up any big events, big news?
I'll be working with the city of Oklahoma City on Wednesday, helping them with their executive leadership. They have a cohort that's a year long. And so kind of walking them through some DEI, IND type of things.
I don't know what either one of those means, but okay.
It's like diversity.
Oh, yes, we talked about this already. Yeah,
we did.
Every time you throw in the IED, it throws me off. I'm what?
It's like the IED in the arm.
Yes. So that's diversity,
equity, and inclusion.
Yes.
But it's just kind of we're trying to backdoor the conversation just because I believe it's gotten so narrow and muddy. And so,
well, I mean, we just talked a lot about the city of Oklahoma City. I wasn't going to say what part of it. I did. So, so some of my thoughts about it, and I think we made some headway on that. That hopefully might help you enter that conversation with a little bit more information.
Yes. Yeah. And so based on that conversation, I've kind of reformulated an approach to that, right? Because I was talking about how I'm more of a connection and relationship guy. And then you were like, that's what it is. Like, that's all what it is. And so I focus a little bit more on that. I'm working with career checks for the state. I'll be in Utah doing some things, and then I'll come back and I'll fly from Utah to Atlanta and Atlanta back to Oklahoma City, where I'll be hosting an event called Ripple OKC with Doug Hacking. I'll be emceeing that. And that's like a TED Talk type of thing. And then the following Sunday, I'll be working with a men's group. And so trying to stay active, man, trying to stay busy.
So when is Ripple? Like, is that a thing that people will have the opportunity to attend? Or
Ripple is a public event. You can actually go to Ripple. I think it's rippleokc.com.
Okay.
And you can find out about the event. It's Friday, August 4th. I believe is the date.
So all this is happening that quickly?
Yeah, the next 2 weeks are pretty busy for me.
Oh
man.
my God, I'm so glad I caught you when I did.
Yeah.
You're about to spend when you get back.
So when we were texting, I was like, I shot you that immediate day because I knew if it wasn't before then after the next 2 weeks, you'll push you in the second, third week of August.
Okay, yeah.
So I want to get on there pretty soon, which is really, really cool. But yeah, just staying busy, man. Everything is connection, community, and mentorship based. Like I said, when we started out 2 hours ago, like I try to really stay in those lanes. And so being able to work not only in the state of Oklahoma, but I'll be going Tulsa, Oklahoma City, Tulsa, Utah, Atlanta, back to Oklahoma City. Over the course of 2 weeks. I'm excited about being able to talk about the things, man.
Thank you so much for coming on, like, especially for coming on early on my podcast.
Yeah.
Like, you easily could have been like, get a couple episodes under your belt.
Oh, no,
and then I'll show up for you. Like, because I think that this is going to very early on provide a tone for the kind of show that I want to do.
Yeah.
Like, I think that, these kind of, serious, important conversations while also having fun.
Yeah.
Is so important. And there's so much to be gained from them, and like having different people's opinions shared in a space where, I'm not trying to attack you. You're not trying to attack me
at all.
We might have some differing opinions, but hopefully we're going to learn something.
Absolutely.
And those shared insights are going to create growth in our society.
Yeah, yeah. And I want to be like, in the same way that Joe Rogan has people back on 3, 4, 5 times, I want to be the guy that comes back, right? And be like, what are we talking about this time, baby?
Episode 6, Derrick Sier.
Episode 8.
You'll just become my co-host after this. It's like Bruce and Derrick Sier, I think on air.
I love that. Hey man, I want to applaud you on taking this leap, this jump.
Hey, thank you, man. Like, I mean, you were part of it.
Yeah.
Like, just how, like I said, our conversations, our conversations were called failure talks. Because I met with him and I just asked him, he's like, if there's anything I could do to help you, what would it be? And I said, I want to learn from your failures.
Yeah.
Like, you've already done it. Like, I don't want to do it again. If there's something I can learn from, like, let me do that.
Absolutely.
And he's taken the time to sit down with me a couple hours, every couple of weeks and just talk through the ways that he's, kind of gone awry in different, like, many, from family life to business life and everything, and just has laid it out for me. And I've learned some valuable insights, and not taking the right steps early enough was some of those. And from you and Regina and my friend Kate, all of those things were saying, you need to start podcasting now.
Yeah.
You need to stop waiting. Because it's like, this was always the thing that was like, I think I'll do that eventually. Mm-hmm. And it was like, just do the thing.
Yeah.
Stop like waiting for all the stars to align. Just start doing it.
Made the jump.
And my wife said, like, last night, this was weird. My wife said, I'm so proud of you. And I was like, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
But then she said it again. Mm-hmm. Like, she told me she's proud of me before. She's never told me twice in the same day. And I was like, what is going on?
What is happening?
She's like, I could have told you whenever I met you over 15 years ago that this would have been a space where you would have been great in. Like, I've always thought you need to talk to people and you need to help people. And I was like, I usually don't have a problem getting compliments. Like, I like my accolades, but this was on a different level. And it was like, because I've also been feeling, for one, like I'm in the midst of a moment where things are about to change significantly for me. Yeah. Like, I was like, I feel like I'm feeling very meta. It's like I'm doing the thing right now. And like, I never felt that way before. Yeah. It's like when we moved down here to, change our life, to start the fire department, like, we left Tulsa to come to Oklahoma City. Like, that was a big move. It didn't feel like this is the thing. Like, it didn't feel like it begins now. That, like, as I was setting up my studio in here, I was like, it's starting. And I was like, and then for her to have that instant, she's like, I'm proud of you. I was like, okay, this is feeling this is feeling real, like
Yeah.
real, like good in a good way. It's not feeling like there's not extra pressure or anything. It's just like it's happening.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I'm really excited, and thank you for your
Congratulations,
time
man.
and your commitment. And I think it's going to be a really good thing.
Yeah.
And I hope that you are able to. Some of the people that you have who support you
Mm-hmm.
will listen and will gain something, and hopefully will maybe even reach out and want to be on the show, because I know some heavyweights.
Yeah, man. I keep showing up at events. I keep shaking hands, and those hands turn into other hands, and so I love it. This is a good project, man. I'm proud of you, bro.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for listening to Authentic on Air with Bruce Alexander. This has been Derrick Sier, and he has been a fantastic guest, and he will be back. So thank you everybody. Have a great day.
Peace.